Well, I am very privileged today. We are discussing a really important topic, and I always learn something new when I speak to Stephen J. Manning. If you don't know him, he built $1 billion marketing business. He's worked with many of the world's top corporations. I don't know the percentage, but it's certainly in the 90%, I would say. And we are maybe 95 or more, but we are navigating corporate culture at the moment. And this video will explore the intricacies of corporate culture, how to navigate it effectively, and it will provide insights into understanding company values, communication styles, and building relationships within a corporate setting, which is not easy from the people I speak to. I think there's a lot of difficulties involved, to be honest. So
Welcome to the Build Business Acumen podcast, where we deliver practical knowledge and powerful guidance. Here is your futuristic host, Nathaniel Skula.
I will start with a 95%. You're being very, very kind. I have been fortunate to work with some of the biggest and the best, and without a doubt, learned from all of them. I learned much more from my clients than they ever benefited from my presence. So, no, I made a massive topic. There are, let's just say that if you work for anybody or you lead any enterprise, if you ignore the relevance or culture that you're working in, I don't mean the society, I mean the culture of the company, you are a short-term employee or you're going to be a failed leader. And I think corporate culture extends from leader to any level of employee. If you think that you are immune from cultural impact, it's foolish. And that's true from the CEO right through the ranks. If you think that you can go to work and do your job really well, and you're in an island of your own there because you are performing, and you just ignore everything else, I suggest updating the resume and looking for another job. And that is true from the most senior level to the bottom level. And I just you mentioned companies that I might have worked with and certainly know a great deal about. And a real example in terms of what I just said, if you are the top chemist, top formulating scientist at Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Merck, top engineering company, I know a lot about Bechtel, car makers, if you are the best design engineer at Toyota or Ford or Daimler, you are in charge of global distribution and sales for Nissan, Tesla. I think Tesla houses some brilliant people. Now, if you don't think there's a real cultural component to working at Tesla, you can't read or write or watch anything on TV. That is really culturally driven by Elon Musk. Banks, JP Morgan, Citigroup, been in those meetings. If you can't appreciate the culture, you can't function. A quick example, Nissan. A while ago, I was asked to address why is it that we, Nissan, are losing market share in one category of automobile in the United States. Why is it? How could we lose that to General Motors? Buick, of all people. Can't be. Okay, so fortunately for me, I had watched enough network television to see what the advertising paradigm was for that Buick automobile and then a competing Nissan automobile. And I said, humbly, I may have an idea. So now you're in a meeting with the CEO and the global head of distribution and 22 other people, and humble me say, well, there's some advertising that they are now doing, product placement, that is so superior, is driving sales. I think they were spending $5 million a day at the time on ordinary advertising. And I suggested a minor shift, not that much. And the senior global dude, these are all really serene, very well dressed, somewhat older gentlemen, pounded the table and said, "We're not going to do that. What we do is cast in stone." Now, you can guess how much money that man gets paid for that massive job. You can guess the influence he has on a global scale on automobile sales. I said, "Okay, you asked. That's what I see. Do with it as you will." Cast in stone. Okay, so 2 weeks later, I got a brief email from the CEO who said, "Hi, Steve. I didn't know we were friends. Just wanted to let you know that Mr., the man who told you it was cast in stone, is no longer employed here. The only things cast in stone in my company are hard work and respect. Best Yoshi." I guess that was his nickname. I didn't know that. Okay, a very interesting live example for me in terms of corporate culture. Okay, so the thing about $5 million a day we're spending, yeah, well, that's true. But what's important to me is to convey the fact that culturally in this company, we value hard work and respect beyond sales, which was amazing to me. So if you think that you can ignore corporate culture, you're ignoring the basic tenets of existing in the business long term. And that goes hand in hand with managing up, managing your boss. You better read that room very carefully and manage it, because that boss dictates the rhythm and the simple existence of within that organization. Managing down, we can talk and we have endlessly about leadership, management, and all of that. Cultures in companies are phenomenal. And if you don't recognize it, again, polish up your resume and find some other job. Oh, by the way, that's equally true if you happen to be one of two clerks in the corner cobbler store or the liquor store. There's a culture there. And last but not least, your boss signs your paycheck and he can't fire you. You can't fire your boss. Unless, of course, well, I worked for a couple of companies to have board of directors who can fire the CEO. It's somewhat a massive sort of upheaval thing, but I have been inside a couple of those where the culture driven by the CEO began to change so significantly as to create up to brain drain among the best and the brightest in the company who just could not exist in what that CEO began to push on them. Where the CEO began to, his lines went from a fantastic company where everyone felt welcome, the productivity was phenomenal, where they combined business with altruism. There is no altruism unless there are profits. This CEO drove that so strong, so well. There were people lining up to come to the company. They were always, quote, the best employer in this big city in the country, to where he started to blur, his lines blurred between altruism and business. And all of a sudden, saving the whales was more important than everything else. And people kept saying, you got to be doing everything else. You can't save the whales. And then, of course, there was grass growing on the parking lots on all these massive facilities. And the lawns weren't being mowed because that was bad for the environment. And then all these phenomenal people found themselves rudderless. The culture changed where they didn't know what was good, what was bad, and what was necessary. And then where the recruiting was done so elegantly, now it was just triage. And of course, how do we fix that? We came up with something. It was really, really very different to save that company, big company, save that from people saying, What we manufacture, we sell, we build buildings, we do all of that, but it's just wrong. And our sales are now diminishing. And the product development is taking a terrible hit. And we're working harder than ever. And then these highly sought after people said, I'm better off working in a bed and breakfast in Connecticut because the value of my presence is just not there. And it was not the people, it was the culture around them that became a downward vortex of productivity. Hey, your employee, read the room, understand who's doing what and why, creating alignments, mentorships, very important to identify within a culture of a company. How does that work? Who seems to have a real finger on the pulse of the culture and historical relevance and future potential of the culture of this company? Do I fit in? No, I'm a lone wolf. Congratulations. Try to find a really solitary job. Not in corporate America or corporate Europe. Not going to find that. Again, it's amazing when you walk into big old company, Citigroup, and you find, there are some people that are out there by themselves because they have a skill that is so unique, but those are very few. You still have to fit in. And sometimes you look at, how could you fire that guy or that woman? Just didn't fit in. The best producer didn't fit in. And I had that conversation with one of my bosses for many years, where I may not like that guy, we may not get along, but can we look at the production? But can we, as an organization, sustain what we're doing with that negative component? And of course, there's always a good question among uber thinkers on this stuff is, if you find a cancer in a company, do you cut it out? Or you say, I don't know what happens if I do cut that out. How will that affect the company? If it happens to be somebody who doesn't get the culture and does not want to fit in, ultimately that's just destructive.
Wow. You made me think about a lot of things there. I talk to lots and lots of people in technology companies, and in a lot of these companies, I'm not going to mention any names, but a lot of these companies, they actually have a real problem with these things, with taking credit for other people's ideas, with backstabbing people, with those two things are huge in my personal opinion, because they're very demotivational, right? I know what you talked about mostly is about the CEO and how he drives or she drives the company culture, right? But when you have problems like that, it can be inherent, can't it, within those businesses, that they literally just backstab each other because they're trying to get one up on the person to look better than them, so that they actually get promoted or hold on to their job, versus that person who is in essence being bullied, in my personal opinion. And how does that relate to the kind of corporate culture?
Well, I think that, proverbially, it's getting brownie points at the expense of someone else. Let's just say that if you have an enlightened leader or boss, manager, whatever, that becomes quite obvious. You're trying to excel at the expense of someone else. Now, there's a point at which you have to excel at the expense of someone else. I've been there where I walked into my boss's office and said, look, I cannot work with that situation because it's just so negative, so deleterious to the whole thing. And I'm not looking to take over. I'm not that empire builder. I'm not going to take over. I'm not trying to get, hey, you're a good guy, he's a bad guy. None of that. But from a corporate standpoint, from the overall good of this is happening. Again, and then, of course, I always coach people who tell me that, well, I'm going to go and complain about that person and do that. And I say, wait, whoa. When you are on a career track, whatever that is, you have a job, it's not a horse race. In other words, you're not on a same racetrack with that person. You are on that tractor, you run your own race. And if you run a satisfactory race, meaning you accomplish what you want to, you're making progress, you're better, you will succeed beyond the guy who may run faster. Okay, because you are going to be, I always thought about when you're an athlete. I was too. Part of my daily routine was a 10-mile run for a couple of decades, in my busy life. And you know what? I never ran with anyone else because I was too slow. But I didn't know a lot of people that wanted to do 10 miles, rain, shine, tsunami. Hell, I ran in a massive storm in the Far East, which wiped out villages because I was hooked on that. But the point for me was, I will run my race and I will be in good shape and I'll be smarter, brighter. I spent all those long minutes because I said, I'm just an old truck, but I'm going to make it 10 miles, whereas you're not. I don't care how fast you are. You'll burn out. You burn out the second, third, 19th day, but you will. So run your own race
Right.
and a corporate culture will reward the person who's doing what they're supposed to do, doing it well, doing it consistently. Okay, so today, Bob over there is the new shiny penny. Okay, everybody likes the new shiny penny. More often than not, when you think the grass is greener over there, when you get there, you discover it's cheap AstroTurf. A healthy company culture will reward the person who's doing what they're supposed to do, who's innovative, consistent, reliable, and part of the gig,
Right.
not by himself, part of the gig, earning their keep, earning beyond that, being innovative. And you know what? If you're working the right company, the company will recognize you for that. Without a doubt, they will.
Right.
If they
Right.
don't, you're wrong for the job. The job is wrong for you.
That makes sense. So onto communication styles. It fits in very nicely to this conversation. So I mean, really, just stop looking at it in a way that it is a race against other people. It is a race against yourself and your own abilities, right? And upskilling yourself and all of these things.
Correct.
But communicating is, I mean, we talk about communication all the time, and we all have different styles of communication, and we talk about that privately as well, because I'm quite soft in my communication, but I'm beginning to learn how to get my point across. And I think in the beginning, a lot of people really struggle with getting their point across in certainly in written communication and also verbal as well. So, I mean, there are levels, right, to communication styles
Mm-hmm.
and abilities. And it also reflects your personality as well, right? Like if you have a personality that is quite introverted, then that can also cause you a problem, most certainly when it comes to communication styles. But also it can be a benefit, because in a corporate setting, perhaps being more introverted could be a good thing if you tend to talk too much about certain things or communicate in a way that doesn't fit the culture, right?
Okay. Well, it's again, the most critical thing is to understand what I call the nut behind the wheel. Who exactly are you talking to? And allow me. You look at typically communication issues arise more critically when you're talking up, when you're talking to management leaders and so on, that you report to. Oh, by the way, not to dismiss the critical aspect of communicating the people you work with and the people who work for you. But I think about leadership. I say something that leaders lead in many ways. I mean, they lead by example. How cool is that? And then they lead by fear, autocracy, sometimes disingenuous benevolence. You know, the boss that smiles at you, say, "It's okay, Bob. Oh, I'm running for the hills. Been there, done that, hated it." And then, of course, there's a leader who's laissez-faire. Do whatever you want. You're good. Do whatever you want. Okie dokie. When you buy into that, you just bought an insurance policy, you're going to fail. Because right after the boss says, do what you want, you're thinking, do I really want him to do that? And then you are in for an audit for the rest of your life. Don't do so. Be careful how you communicate with people like that. And then there's a charismatic leader who's going to knock you with all that charm. And right after he knocks you with a charm, he calls HR and says, find me a replacement. Just a word of caution. And then, of course, a lot of readers just lead by checkbook. I'm the guy who signs the check. Now, in terms of, okay, now here's a revolutionary idea. How revolutionary? I'll explain. I really need to write that email to Joanna over there or Bob over here, my boss's boss, or a group of people that report to me. And I'm just uncertain. I know what I want to say, but I'm uncertain how to say it. So, as I say 50 times a month, so if you were sitting face to face in a coffee shop, what would you say? Well, I would say this. And then I'd like to say, okay, so why don't you write that? Well, really? Yeah, really. Well, it may not sound, well, it doesn't sound so sophisticated. What's your goal? To win a Pulitzer or to communicate that? Well, I just want to get my message across. So you think over a cup of coffee, this is what you'd say. Yeah, then why don't you write it? I don't know how. Really? Okay. And by the way, that is so common to people in all levels of management. I've had clients where the CEOs would send me, I told you this, I'm writing this email to my wife, doesn't sound right. Say what? You've been living with a woman for what, 29 years? You have 4 kids? And you don't know how to tell her that there's something she's doing that is bothering you? What would you say to her if the kids were not around over a cup of coffee? Well, but that's not that sophisticated, blah, blah, blah. And then okay. Ultimately, if you really are stuck, you're just stuck. Why? Because you chose to be stuck instead of just writing the simple email. None of wherefore, therewithal, theretofore, hereinafter. Oh, just write it. If you're really stuck, you say, who do I know who can hold my hand here? Oh, hey, Nat, I'm writing this. I'm stuck. Would you give it a read? Appreciate your honest assessment. Do you know what Nat's going to do? Be delighted to give you his input just because you asked nicely. He doesn't need to get paid. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. When I can't sleep at 2 a.m, I write something. Okay? Have done that. Will do that. I've done $40 billion worth of business doing stuff. And every once in a while, I will write that email, and I write a lot of emails, and I send it to my wife. First of all, she knows my voice. She knows me. And I send it, particularly if it's contentious in some way. And I say, Annie, is this in English? And 2, is this angry? Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to see an angry guy yelling. And she will come back and tell me where I need to soften it up. This may work better. She's not going to change the tone, not going to change the purpose, but she'll make it a yesable proposition. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, it's just because it's at the forefront of all of our minds. I was sitting a couple of years ago with 2 people who I consider the best commercial advertising writers in the history of the world. I just do. They're, the rest of us are pedestrian. And I said, can we send a note to then President Trump? And the note is this: Dear President Trump, please have staff read the attached 3 bios. John, Robert, and Steve. We humbly purport to know something about messaging. Here's an offer. Every time, 24 hours a day, when you feel like firing off that tweet, going on Twitter and laying it down, send it to us 24/7. We will guarantee send it back to you within 6 minutes with some choice of language without changing the messaging in any way. In other words, sir, it's just form, not substance. And you will not get the critical backlash, we think. It's just our olive branch to the people who get really offended by the stuff you write. We didn't get flowers, we didn't get hired, and we didn't get audited by the IRS. So it was an interesting exercise. But the point I'm making is, it's more often than not, more often you believe, I will get that email. And then I will get the smart email to this, which tells me what they think. And the last line is, if this offends you, no offense was intended, let me know.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's good.
Okay, because halfway through it, I'm halfway to the airport with a baseball bat. I'm going to get there. I'm going to beat the guy about the head.
Yeah.
And then he says, look, if this offends you, that's not the intent. Let me know.
Right.
I will also write that 100 times to say, my intent is to accomplish the following. Mm-hmm. If I did not with this piece of communication, I'm good 20 hours a day to have a long chat with you about it. 99% of people are really receptive to that because it shows humanity. Oh, and it's really culturally, I don't mean geographically, culturally, it's a very strong statement to make. I respect who you are, what you are, where you come from. And again, I said this earlier, that is not much different, if at all different, when you communicate up in an organization or you communicate laterally, you communicate down. You don't want to go talk at people who report to you. You don't talk to them here. You don't talk to them here. And when you talk to them this way, it has to be mutual benefit driven. Otherwise, you get yes sir, yes ma'am. And then they turn around. Can you spell sabotage? Sometimes it's spelled neglect. Sometimes it's spelled dismissed. And I've been there where I said, oh, he'll get over it, about my boss, to find out my boss never got over it. 15 years later, reminded me. Then I was running his company.
Wow.
When I said, blowing off steam, no, it was conviction. Anyway, I think I talked that one to death.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of insights there, and I greatly appreciate that. And we're really enjoying Monday Influencer, and we love our loyal subscribers. And if you haven't joined that yet, then please do. And thank you very much.
I have to make a comment about Monday Influencer since we're talking about writing and stuff. You and I have written a great deal about a lot of things, spoken. We have 300-400 expert talks out there. We do 2 podcasts a week, 3 a week. And then you and I have worked with some of the biggest companies on earth. You and I share some experience. You were an IBM insider. I just write about IBM. But, and it's an interesting thing to come to this point in our lives, certainly our business lives, when we created something called the Monday Influencer. And this is, if there is rewarding writing or rewards in writing, it is much more rewarding for me than any book I've written. And I'm working on the next 2, and I'm saying, no, I would rather do another Monday Influencer. And I look forward to the hours spent every week writing the Monday Influencer. And by the way, I am very fortunate to have you as a partner. because you
Thank
add
you.
a lot of, you had two things. You had a lot of value, and you also had a lot of reality and checks and balances.
Thank
And
you.
then we have the great fortune to have some amazing, amazing people who contribute to our thing, contribute to Influencer, because, well, you know, we asked them and they're glad to do it.
Yeah,
Who's getting paid? Nobody.
not yet.
But you know, you just did an interview an hour ago with Michael Tobin, OBE. Well, the late Queen thought a lot about Michael Tobin. Otherwise, she would
Absolutely.
not have given him this incredible station. OBE. I talked to Lisa yesterday, one of your collaborators, ours. Well, she also got not quite knighted, but something like that
MBE.
from
She got an MBE.
MBE
It's a similar. It's
from.
not quite an OBE, yeah, but it nearly is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but hey, listen,
it's
how many
amazing.
of them are there?
There aren't that many
And
people
these
who get that.
people read the Monday Influencer and they contribute to it. Now, these people are relevant. When Tobin speaks, a lot of people listen. When Lisa speaks, a lot of people listen. Kim, a lot of people listen. When Selwyn Gerber speaks, well, I know he's got a few $1 billion of their money managing. People listen. Those are the people who help us produce this, what I think is just a triumphant idea we've ever had.
100%.
Anyway, thank you for listening.
And Nicholas Babin as well. We can't forget Nicholas.
And Nicholas, I mean, okay, good.
Yeah,
well, you know what? It's only Sony Europe. You know what I mean?
Nicholas is brilliant, and he wrote the book, The Talking Dog, which is super. But if you haven't subscribed to Monday Influencer, then you can do that. Just go to mondayinfluencer.com, sign up for your $1 1 month trial. You get four episodes, and you get involved with what we're doing. And we love you guys. So thank you for supporting us, and thanks, Steve. Greatly appreciate it.
It is always my pleasure, Nat. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe, and wherever you prefer, share with your friends. And if you enjoyed the show, drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen.